Amazing single dad buys cotton candy for a millionaire's son. Discover the surprising twist. Jake wiped the sweat from his brow as he tightened the last bolt on a rusty old pickup in his cramped garage. The sound of a horn blaring pierced the air as a car rolled by outside, but he was too focused on the engine in front of him to care. Being a mechanic in a small Midwestern town was demanding work, but the pressure of keeping the business afloat and providing for his 7-year-old son Tommy weighed on him like an anchor. With bills piling up and rent due next week, he felt a persistent knot in his stomach. Each tick of the clock reminded him of his constant struggle to balance work with being a dad. All he wanted was to make Tommy proud, to give him a glimpse of the carefree life he wished for, but most days it seemed impossible. With each hour spent hunched over cars, Jake worried he was missing moments that could slip away forever. There was no room for failure. When he finally clocked out and headed home, his heart ached with the thought of disappointing Tommy. Tonight, he promised himself they would go to the fair. Just an escape, a fleeting moment where laughter would drown out the weight of the world pressing down on him. The lively colors and laughter of the fair pulsed at the edges of his anxiety as he and Tommy wandered among the vibrant stalls. Their spirits lifted, but Jake's eyes flickered nervously to his pocket, counting the last few crumpled bills. When Tommy's gaze fixed on the cotton candy stand, his excitement ignited. Jake's heart swelled, a simple request that felt monumental. He couldn't let his son down. He fished out his last few dollars, a lump in his throat as he handed them over to the vendor. "Thanks, Dad," Tommy chirped, his face lighting up with joy as he clutched the fluffy pink treat. In that moment, Jake's heart soared, buoyed by the sheer delight on Tommy's face, oblivious to the growing pressures that tangled within him. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now, let's continue. But just beyond their joy, a stark contrast glared back at Jake. In the VIP area, he noticed a boy about Tommy's age, sitting alone amid piles of candy, rare toys, and plush animals. He was surrounded by chattering friends who didn't seem to notice his solemnness. From the corner of his eye, Jake saw Ethan, the wealthy boy, trying to blend in, visibly uncomfortable. All Jake could think was that wealth was supposed to provide happiness, yet there Ethan sat, isolated. As if sensing his gaze, Ethan turned and locked eyes with Tommy, who was happily spinning the cotton candy above his head. Their shared laughter created a connection that seemed fragile yet piercingly pure, igniting an unexpected spark between their disparate worlds. Jake felt a twinge of dread. Would this friendship blossom, or would it puncture the delicate facade he'd so painstakingly constructed, a world where he could keep Tommy safe from social mockery? The potential fallout spiraled through Jake's mind. What would happen if Ethan's father discovered their friendship? Would whispers suffocate the innocent bond blooming before him? He could protect Tommy, hold him close, and label this as overlookable ignorance. But he also couldn't deny that something beautiful was growing, something that made both boys momentarily free from the chains that bound them. And in that intoxicating moment of joy, Jake wrestled with his heart and his mind, knowing the turmoil that loomed ahead. His resolve began to crack, not with fear alone, but with the anguish of watching the world try to pull apart something pure. Jake surveyed the scene before him, an internal conflict churning within. Tommy's laughter intertwined with the joyous melodies of the fair, creating a symphony that contrasted sharply with Jake's escalating anxiety. The realization that tomorrow might bring new challenges weighed heavily on him. As he grappled with the unexpected connection between his son and Ethan, he felt the lines of his protective instincts tighten. His mind wandered to the mechanics of his own life, the constant grind of equipment and grease, the wear of late nights spent in the garage, always wondering if he had made the right choices. It was comfortable to hide behind the tools, but moments like this forced him to confront the larger canvas of his existence. He longed for genuine connection, yet was terrified of the implications it brought. What was holding his heart hostage was the fear of inadequacy, an age-old battle raging within him. He recalled countless conversations with other fathers, the weighty discussions that unfolded over sports games or school projects. They boasted about their children's achievements, mocking his apprehension and doubt without knowing the struggles beneath his surface. In their world, the pressures of wealth offered solace, while he fought daily against the tides of financial uncertainty. As the laughter of both boys echoed around him, he caught himself searching for reassurance. Tommy was buoyant, but Jake noticed the fleeting glances he exchanged with Ethan. Was it admiration or something deeper? Social dynamics danced through his mind, the stark inequalities of childhood, the innocence that could easily shatter. He had promised himself to shield Tommy from all of it, but watching the boys jump and squeal with joy, he couldn't help but ponder if this different friendship was worth the risk. Tommy might discover things about wealth that would leave him questioning their life and choices. But would it veer off course, or could it blossom into something that instilled confidence and ambition rather than envy? Guiding himself through these tangled thoughts, he made a decision. Rather than retreating into his fear, he would engage. Perhaps he needed to confront these delicate waters, test boundaries, and challenge the very ideas that kept him restrained. So he approached the boys, forced a brave smile despite the turmoil brewing inside. "Having fun, fellas?" Tommy beamed. "Dad, Ethan's going to ride the Ferris wheel next. You should come with us." Jake hesitated, suddenly feeling the piercing weight of judgment while standing before their youthful exuberance. Sure. But what do you think, Ethan? You up for it?" He glanced at Ethan, unsure of how to navigate the nuances between their stark realities. Ethan perked up, his eyes sparkling for a brief moment. "Yeah, it's way better with three." Their enthusiasm tugged at him, prompting him to reconsider his earlier doubts. Maybe this could be a moment of learning for all of them, understanding that differences in wealth didn't definitively chart their destinies. As they approached the Ferris wheel, an unexpected surge of hope coursed through him, igniting a flame of curiosity about how his parenting philosophy could evolve. Perhaps this friendship would hold more wisdom than he realized, guiding him toward new perspectives about life and success. But what if it unraveled into something darker? The thought crept in, casting shadows over his buoyant trepidation. As they boarded the ride, Jake wrestled with the duality of excitement and fear, knowing that the boys were bound to unearth truths about social divides and expectations that would soon consume their young lives. With those uncertainties swirling in his mind, he cast another glance at Ethan, his heart thudding against the confines of protective impulses, realizing this was just the beginning of an unforeseen journey, one where he would either evolve alongside his son or stifle the growth they both needed. Tomorrow would ignite a new chapter, one that could redefine everything Jake thought he knew about himself, fatherhood, and friendship. What awaited them at the heights of the Ferris wheel? Insight or chaos? He braced himself for the revelation. As the Ferris wheel creaked into motion, Jake felt the wind whip against his face, an exhilarating sensation tinged with a trace of fear. The carousel of colors beneath them blurred, and he caught sight of Tommy's radiant smile, infected by Ethan's youthful enthusiasm. Each rotation brought them higher, and with each upward tick, Jake grappled with his swirling sentiments. The exhilarating height hinted at possibility, yet loomed like an unknown threat. Jake's heart raced not just from the ride, but from the weight of new revelations pressing upon him. While they ascended, the view offered a contrasting panorama of their lives. One boy with limitless possibilities at his fingertips, and another who navigated a different set of challenges. What were the lessons embedded in this juxtaposition? Tommy was his laughter piercing through Jake's ruminative haze. A longing for his son's unfiltered joy surged within him. Jake recalled his own childhood, filled with barriers and self-imposed restrictions. Where was the boldness he once felt? What had shaken his confidence to the core? The boy's friendship, in some ways, ignited jealousy and admiration in equal measure. He would have relished the carefree nature of a childhood like Ethan's, no visible scars or struggles to hinder his charm. Yet here Jake was, standing precariously at the intersection of two worlds, battling against the urgency for control. As the wheel continued its ascent, Jake considered more than just the boys' camaraderie. He pondered what their relationship might reveal about him. Was he fostering good habits of vulnerability and openness, or was he merely projecting his insecurities upon them? This unexpected concern hinted at a deeper fracture within him. He clenched the safety bar instinctively, a metaphorical grasp on fatherhood that reflected both his aspirations and his anxieties. Through the laughter of the boys and the vibrant chaos below, visions of his own inadequacies bubbled up. The conversations with other fathers could replay endlessly in his mind, their superiority thrumming like an unyielding drumbeat. He had to face it. He detested the feeling of falling short against the tales spun by others, men who carried more cash than cares. But how did he begin to reconcile that desperation? What if the very essence of being a father hinged on vulnerability instead of perceived strength? "Gosh, Dad, look at that!" Tommy's voice broke through his reverie, pointing toward the swirling colors of the fair. The sheer glee in his tone reminded Jake that perhaps joy could be a lesson learned, something that didn't need to be hoarded or justified. Ethan leaned in, his excitement palpable. "Yeah, it's like flying. We should do this more often." Jake caught the underlying sentiment, trampled beneath their carefreeness, a hint of mortality behind their childhood bravado. It struck him then. A harsh reality lurked beneath their playfulness. This innocent friendship could just as easily morph into envy or disappointment, leading to a reckoning he wasn't quite ready for. What if he embraced the unknown instead of fearing it? Pushing against the secure parameters he had built, he slipped into the fluid dynamics of possibility. Life could be defined, not by wealth, but by allowing love and vulnerability to sit at the forefront. As the Ferris wheel began to descend, Jake resolved to liberate himself from the shadows of his past. Maybe he could engineer a new path, one that didn't adhere to rigid societal constructions. But just as he tasted the sweetness of this revelation, the ride jerked suddenly, leaving his heart drumming like a hammer against an anvil. He narrowed his gaze, instinctively protective. What was that? His pulse quickened, but there was no time for fear now. Tomorrow had heavier stakes than he had anticipated. He would need to prepare mentally and emotionally. The looming uncertainties over Tommy and Ethan's friendship rushed back, reminding him that growth wasn't always a smooth ascent. A question hovered at the edges of his mind, refusing to fade. Could he truly redefine the essence of fatherhood, or was he merely a spectator in their evolving narrative? As they touched back down, Jake felt a stirring beneath his skin, an urgency to seize control over his insecurities before they spiraled into chaos. The ground cradled his feet, yet Jake could not shake the vertigo of transformation. He understood that this was merely the beginning. What awaited in the sunlight of tomorrow's reality felt precarious yet necessary. Would he rise to the occasion, or would he spiral back into predictable patterns of fear? Jake stepped away from the Ferris wheel, grounding himself in the more stable surroundings of the fair. The air was thick with the scents of popcorn and roasted nuts, reminiscent of a simpler time. The vibrant lights flickered around him, yet the chaos inside his mind swirled far louder. He forced himself to breathe, to focus on Tommy's laughter echoing a few paces ahead with Ethan, who was busy hoping for an oversized stuffed animal from a ring toss game. Yet amidst their enthusiasm, a persistent doubt lingered in the recesses of Jake's psyche. The ride had brought unexpected clarity, yet now he felt paralyzed, as if the revelatory heights he'd just traversed were merely a mirage. "Dad, can we play?" Tommy's hopeful gaze turned toward him, filled with unfiltered eagerness. The innocent spark in Tommy's eyes ignited something within Jake, the urgent need to step beyond his trepidations and into the role of the father he wanted to be. "Sure," he responded, though his voice trembled. The moment felt pivotal, a stepping stone toward the father he aspired to become. The three of them approached the ring toss, a contest resting precariously on luck and physics. Jake observed the scene, taking in the gleeful atmosphere, the clamor of competing voices, the cheers of winners, the groans of those who missed. This was life, messy and unpredictable. It made him question what he had been denying himself, the willingness to embrace uncertainties in order to engage fully. As he stood there, guiding the boys, it struck him. What if he approached fatherhood not as a series of checkboxes to tick off, but as an open canvas for creativity and growth? His insecurities about its definition weren't set in stone. They were fluid, much like his current feelings about being there for Tommy and Ethan. "Hey, Tommy, you want to try it first?" Jake offered, nodding towards the wooden Ruth. The idea of handing over choice ignited excitement for both kids. With determination, Tommy stepped up, ring in hand, although Jake noticed an encroaching tension. The distinction between success and failure in his son's young mind was palpable. He felt the anxious energy in his stomach churn. History whispered doubts into his ears. "What if Tommy fails?" the old voice mocked. Yet beneath it simmered a rebellious thought. What if failure was just an opportunity in disguise? The thrill of possibility flickered at the edges of his thoughts. "Just focus on the target," Jake guided, his voice quiet yet steady. "Remember, it's about having fun." The paternal instinct kicked in, and he realized the paradox. Vulnerability didn't mean weakness, it meant connection. As Tommy tossed the ring, it missed the intended target, swirling harmlessly around a nearby soda bottle. For a moment, Jake's heart dropped. A sense of disappointment washed over Tommy as he wore a fleeting mask of defeat. But before Jake could react, he caught a glimpse of Ethan's encouraging smile, a reassurance that joy thrived beyond conquering games. "You've got another shot," Ethan declared, enthusiasm illuminating his words. Jake leaned in closer to Tommy, crouching to meet his gaze. "Did you have fun?" he asked softly, allowing the weight of the moment to settle. He noticed how the disappointment in Tommy's eyes eased, replaced by the playful energy of a child who was permitted to feel frustrated, but also embraced by those who supported him. "Yeah, can I try again?" Tommy's voice brimmed with determination, reminding Jake that this was not about success, but the lesson embedded in every attempt. "Of course. You know what they say about practice," Jake replied, even more resolute now. With each toss, with every laugh shared, the atmosphere shifted. Jake's perspective expanded. Unfolding wasn't as terrifying as he once believed. He was now not merely a custodian of childhood experiences. He was now a vessel for growth, one who could lead through challenges instead of diverting from them. As the game drew to a close and they moved toward the next ride, an unexpected adrenaline surged through Jake. There was a growing sense of agency in embracing their evolving dynamics, in redefining his part as a father. But his resolve was put to the test when a voice emerged from behind them, one that sent a shiver down his spine. Well, if it isn't the struggling dad trying to play catch-up. Jake turned to face the familiar figure, and amid the cheers of joy, the sting of a challenge loomed larger than any fair consolation prize. He would have to confront what lay ahead, for the stakes of tomorrow grew more consequential by the moment. Jake froze, his pulse quickening as he turned towards the voice. The figure standing behind him was Mark, a classmate from high school, and a person who had never failed to convey an air of superiority. Mark was the kind of guy who seemed to have life figured out, money, career, and a perfect family. The social media feeds confirmed it. He was the golden child, and Jake found himself feeling small and inadequate in his presence. "Mark," Jake managed to reply, clearing his throat to mask the nerves putting a tremor in his voice. "Still at it, I see," Mark continued, a smirk stretching across his face as he eyed the boys. "Is this your version of fatherhood?" His tone dripped with condescension, effortlessly dismissing Jake's attempts to be a present father. Jake felt heat rise in his cheeks, a mix of embarrassment and anger swirling within him. He sought reassurance in Tommy and Ethan's faces, but the weight of Mark's judgment shadowed his thoughts. "I'm just trying to enjoy the day with my kids," he said, unsure whether his voice carried the steadiness he desperately wished for. "Kids, huh? Ha, how quaint." Mark's casually dismissive line elicited a tightening in Jake's chest. Each word felt like a jab at his choices, a reminder of what he perceived as his failures. Jake's initial impulse was to defend himself, but a deeper realization emerged, urging him to think before responding. This had shifted from a mere encounter to a test of his newfound resolve. "Yeah, they're pretty great." Jake forced a smile, glancing down at Tommy, who was now trying to convince Ethan to play another game. The genuine thrill in their laughter was a stark contrast to Mark's judgment, yet Jake couldn't shake the feeling that the more he'd try to prove himself, the more absurd he'd appear to Mark. "What a shame. You know what they say about parenting. It's a reflection of you, right?" Mark raised his eyebrows, tauntingly. It was as if he was challenging Jake's identity, pushing those historical insecurities into the foreground. Jake inhaled deeply, grappling with the growing resentment churning within him. The notion that his worth could hinge upon someone else's opinion gnawed at him. Yet he recognized a pivotal opportunity for introspection. Wasn't this the test he had been denying himself the chance to confront? He recalled the exhilaration of Tommy's laughter after that first ring toss. You couldn't measure a father's success by a scorecard alone. "Parenting is less about perfection and more about being present," he stated, feeling a confidence swell from within. "I'm focusing on building memories, not an image." Mark rolled his eyes, perhaps irritated at his unsatisfied goal of belittling Jake. "Good luck with that, but don't be surprised if they grow up choosing cotton candy and prize-winning toys over getting a solid foundation." Jake clenched his fists, and suddenly a new resolve ignited within him. It felt important not just to shield himself from Mark's judgment, but to think critically about what his children would internalize from their interactions with others. What legacy did he want to impart? That belonging stemmed from material success, or the richness found in moments spent together? Instead of replying, he simply nodded and smiled as Tommy ran over, clutching a small stuffed animal from their previous game. "Look, Dad, I won!" The pride radiating from Tommy's face cut through Jake's frustration, leading him to remember why standing strong in his choices mattered. "It's perfect, buddy. You got it all on your own." Jake turned off the electric tension with genuine enthusiasm as he embraced Tommy. His heart swelled with pride, a feeling he was anything but willing to let Mark undermine. "I've got to go," Mark dismissively said, his confidence faltering slightly as he turned away. "Have fun with the quality time." Suddenly freed from Mark's presence, Jake exhaled deeply. He felt a surge of courage, something akin to a breakthrough. Maybe he could rewrite his narrative, swap dismay for determination, and change the story told about fatherhood. As Tommy and Ethan beckoned him toward the cotton candy stand, Jake stepped forward with renewed vigor, ready to engage fully. Yet a sliver of doubt gnawed at him. He had won this small battle, but what of the ongoing war within? And then a blaring announcement echoed through the fairgrounds, grabbing Jake's attention. "Attention guests, we will be hosting a family contest, prizes for winners." His heart raced at the thought of competition, the stakes higher in a public arena. It felt like fate was taunting him, compelling him to face challenges head-on, This was no ordinary moment. Jake stood frozen, torn between the thrill of participation and the safety of his current approach, as he felt the tangled web of doubt and courage knot tightly within. Would he step up, ready to embrace uncertainties yet again, or retreat into a facade of safety? The choice loomed ahead of him like the towering Ferris wheel, ready to spin him around once more. A swell of emotion surged through Jake as he processed the announcement about the family contest. The challenge dangled before him like bait, promising not just competition, but the opportunity to redefine what it meant to him to be a father. He watched Tommy and Ethan bouncing on their heels, wide-eyed with excitement, and it struck him that stepping into the fray wasn't merely about winning some fleeting prize. This was about wholeheartedly participating in their joy. Yet a whisper of doubt crept in once more. The nagging fear of inadequacy clawed at him. What if he faltered? What if he exposed himself to ridicule? As Mark's words hung in his mind, threading through his thoughts, the idea that others might judge him loomed large. But then, Tommy's infectious enthusiasm surged through him, and Jake felt a flicker of courage ignite within. "Okay," he murmured to himself, "you can do this." He approached his boys, forcing a confident grin onto his face. "Hey, you two, how about we enter that contest?" Their eyes sparkled with excitement, and the tension began to dissolve. "Really, Dad?" Ethan jumped, beaming with eagerness. "Yeah, let's show them what our family can do." The moment he said it, a rush of resolve coursed through him. He would no longer allow his self-worth to be dictated by others, least of all by someone like Mark. The path to registration led them through crowds, their laughter swelling as they moved past colorful booths and delightful aromas. The vibrant energy fired Jake's spirit. Each step felt like a mini victory against the insecurities that had plagued him for so long. Arriving at the contest area, Jake felt a rush of adrenaline kick in. He scanned the scene, a series of fun, goofy challenges designed to pit families against one another in laughter and luck. From sack races to pie-eating contests, each event was an opportunity for them to bond, to make memories that would stretch beyond the day. But lurking beneath the surface was still an ache of anxiety, the voice of doubt whispering that he might not measure up. He shook it off. "We've got this," he asserted, the mantra building momentum. The first event was announced, a relay race involving giant inflatable obstacles. As they gathered on the starting line, the atmosphere buzzed, encouraging. "Ready, set, go!" The air echoed with shouts and cheers as families dashed forward. Tommy and Ethan shot off like rockets, their enthusiasm inspired by Jake's active encouragement. He found himself swept up in their energy, a sensation of freedom washing over him, unburdened by perception. During the race, pockets of focus shifted. Jake wasn't just a participant, but an integral part of a dynamic. Laughter erupted as they tackled the inflatable hurdles, a reminder of the joy in every failure. Upon finishing, they landed in a heap on the grass, exhilarated and slightly disheveled, surrounded by other families celebrating their own victories and defeats. "Dad, we were so awesome!" Tommy exclaimed, eyes glistening. "Yeah, we should totally do it again," Ethan added, the thrill of the contest contagious. The warmth of their excitement enveloped him. This was what he desired, sharing moments of laughter and absurdity that would lay the foundations for a solid relationship. Jake began to see that winning in the traditional sense didn't matter as much as the connections forged in shared effort. Each smile and cheer felt like building blocks for a stronger legacy. But as the contest progressed, a familiar face emerged from the crowd. Mark stood watching, arms crossed and an unimpressed expression glued to his face. Jake felt the weight of his gaze. Was that disdain he saw? The very thought twisted his gut, momentarily grounding him in anxiety. Would this entire adventure crumble in the face of one man's judgment? Was he truly as inadequate as his old rival implied? Just then, Jake realized he felt different than before. He was determined not to shrink back. In the midst of the laughter, he saw potential, the opportunity to face down not only Mark, but the lingering doubts within himself. Maybe the contest was more than just an event. It was a symbolic showdown, a chance to reclaim his narrative. With every fiber in him burning with newfound courage, Jake lifted his chin, allowing a smile to break through. He was ready to take on what lay ahead. Not just the contest, not just Mark, but the path of resilience he had chosen to embark upon. The announcement of the next challenge echoed in the background. His heart raced at the thought, but now it felt like a thrilling call to arms. He was primed for battle, ready to face whatever was coming next. And as the call rang out,
Jake charged towards the next challenge, determined to show not just the crowd, but himself what he was truly made of. What other surprises awaited him in this journey? Would this new path fortify his identity, or would it reveal even deeper challenges lurking beneath the surface? The shrill sound of the whistle pierced the air, jolting Jake back into focus. He was primed for the next challenge, but it was a different feeling this time, confidence mixed with slight apprehension. The crowd's excitement was infectious, yet he couldn't shake off the image of Mark lingering at the edge of the festivities. He resolved to push that thought aside, channeling all his energy into the present moment. The second challenge involved a giant inflatable castle and a series of practically impossible obstacle courses. Initially it seemed daunting, but then Jake watched as Tommy and Ethan bounding toward the inflatable, laughing and shouting, the innocence of their joy sparking something within him. He was their father. He would match that enthusiasm, not merely as a participant, but as a source of encouragement. "Let's do it!" he shouted, sprinting toward the castle and diving into the fray, an impulsive decision emerging from a newfound place of courage. The inflatable walls wobbled as Jake, alongside his sons, plunged into the chaos. The laughter of children filled the air, punctuated by groans of playful defeat. Jake couldn't help but laugh as he navigated the obstacles, dispatching the self-doubt that had threatened to overshadow this day. Every awkward tumble they took only seemed to draw them closer together, cementing the bond he craved. Yet, as he scrambled past a particularly tricky section involving massive inflatable swings, something unexpected surged inside him, a determination to not just participate, but excel. He nevertheless felt the stirrings of competition against the backdrop of shared joy. Guiding his children through each setback, he focused on the way they rallied together, creating strategies not just to win, but to enjoy the sheer absurdity of it all. As they raced through the final stretch, Jake caught sight of Mark again, still watching, his expression a mixture of skepticism and superiority. Suddenly, that image morphed into fuel for Jake. He was not just competing against an idea, he was engaging in a parallel battle against his own fears of failure. Each step he took alongside Tommy and Ethan felt like a strike against the negativity that had crept into his mind. Though they didn't finish first, the pride on Tommy's and Ethan's faces spoke volumes. "We did it, Dad! That was so much fun!" Tommy exclaimed, his cheeks flushed with excitement. "Totally! Let's go again!" Ethan chimed in, his voice bubbling with joy. This was the power of the experience, not finishing first, but finishing together. With every laugh and every shared moment, Jake felt himself shedding layers of old pain, stepping towards a more authentic version of himself as a father. The next challenge was announced, a pie-eating contest. His heart raced, a mixture of exhilaration and embarrassment flooding him at the prospect of it. Could he publicly display his willingness to look ridiculous for the sake of bonding? The question hovered in his mind like a tightrope. "Dad, you're going to do it, right?" Ethan asked innocently, eyes wide with expectation. Jake could see it clearly. His sons looked to him not just for guidance, but for permission to revel in their own silliness. "Yes," he replied, conviction rising within him. "Let's do it." As they made their way to the front, Jake felt different than he had ever felt before. His nervous laughter mingled with the sounds of the growing crowd, but now it was not about spectating. It was about engaging. He was ready to reveal himself, peel back the layers of doubt and jump headfirst into humor. And then the contest began. Pies flew, laughter erupted, and Jake felt an entirely new sensation coursing through him. It wasn't just about the competition or impressing Mark. He was finally stepping into the father he wanted to be. As he smeared whipped cream across his face, a realization dawned on him. He was beginning to define his own legacy. But the pure absurdity of it all revealed a deeper question that lingered. Could he maintain this growth in the face of external judgments, specifically from Mark? With whipped cream soaking his shirt and his boys mimicking his antics just a few steps away, the exhilarating plunge into personal development felt frightening yet necessary. What awaited him after this challenge? Could the journey to reclaim his identity hold even more transformative experiences? The pieces were aligning, and Jake was ready to find out. As the laughter of the crowd settled into a background hum, Jake wiped a dollop of whipped cream from his eye, invigorated by the energy of the moment. His sons were in a fit of giggles, each trying to better the other in their interpretation of his cream-covered antics. In that fleeting instant, the weight of external expectations, specifically Mark's critical gaze, felt a little lighter. Each chuckle from Tommy and Ethan was a reaffirmation of connection, a bond that slowly eclipsed his insecurities. Yet, in the corners of his mind, doubt crept back in. Were these moments just fleeting distractions from deeper issues? The fleeting euphoria of the contest faded momentarily, and Jake instinctively glanced at Mark. The familiar presence loomed like a shadow, poised at the periphery, arms crossed. The critical expressions held remnants of a past filled with judgment and comparisons, reminding him that despite his newfound joy, the remnants of his struggle were not quite purged. "Hey, can we get cotton candy next?" Ethan exclaimed, the excitement returning full throttle in his voice. The once heavy atmosphere lifted again, jolting Jake back to the present and bringing a smile to his face. "Sure, buddy, that sounds great," he replied, trying to mask the remnants of doubt simmering beneath the surface. As they headed toward the booth adorned with fluffy clouds of sugar, Jake caught himself reviewing how he had changed in such a short time. Each activity had not just been larger than life, they were reflections of a metamorphosis occurring within him. The idea of indulging in something as simple as cotton candy while embracing a reckless sense of enjoyment was something he previously wouldn't have done, mostly out of fear of judgment. But now, each sugary bite felt like an affirmation of his journey, an affirmation of the father he wanted to be. "Dad, look!" Tommy shouted, pointing at a group of children joyfully devouring cotton candy. "Let's eat it all at once." It was a wild idea, but in that moment, the heroic figure he had envisioned as a father, someone who embraced silliness and seized these opportunities, surfaced within him. Jake hesitated momentarily, internalizing the impulse to monitor how others perceive them versus the allure of living in the now. "All right," he said, sweeping up the cotton candy with exaggerated fervor. "On the count of 3. As they smashed their faces into the pink sweetness, sugar and laughter erupted everywhere, even drawing the attention of nearby parents who couldn't suppress their own chuckles. This innocent chaos snapped Jake back into what he thought would never feel comfortable: freedom. However, those moments of levity were quickly interrupted when Mark approached, his smile more condescending than jovial. "Nice laugh, Jake. Didn't know an adult could get so messy in public. Quite the sight." The laughter around him dimmed as Jake felt the familiar tide of self-consciousness wash over him. Jake grappled with his immediate reactions, deciding whether to disengage with a snarky retort or brush Mark off entirely. The earlier comfort began to fray, entwined with doubt. Was he truly evolving, or was he merely masking his vulnerabilities in a carnival of distractions? With the cotton candy clinging to his fingers, Jake steadied his breath. "Yeah, messy is good sometimes, Mark. Makes life sweeter," he replied, surprising even himself with the nonchalance that slipped from his lips. His heart raced, a strange combination of exhilaration and fear coursed through him. In that moment, he recognized this confrontation was not just with Mark, but with an ingrained self-image that plagued him. When Mark walked away, Jake felt an unfamiliar sensation bubbling up within him, a power of assertiveness he hadn't tapped into before, igniting sparks of confidence. Perhaps this was part of growth, confronting the elements that had held him back, challenging them head-on. For the first time, he wasn't just reacting, he was actively choosing to stand up for himself. The challenge was far from over, yet Jake felt invigorated by this step, a shift toward valuing his own narrative over others' judgments. Maybe there was more ahead than he had anticipated. Standing there amid cotton candy coalescence, he began to feel ready to confront deeper fears. Could he face Mark again, armed with this new strength? As he locked eyes with his sons, who were still giggling obliviously, Jake felt something stir within. What would he truly stand for if he continued this path? And could he navigate this newfound confidence to grapple with deeper issues affecting his role as a father? With a sense of determination surging within him, Jake set his gaze back at Mark's retreating figure, a sense of resolve forming. The moment to define not just how he faced judgments, but also how he reclaimed who he was as a father had drawn closer. Would he take the plunge into this sea of confrontations, or would he retreat into the safety of self-doubt once more? Jake stood in the swirl of laughter and sticky sweetness, a whirlwind of emotions crashing against his newfound resolve. The lightness both exhilarated and terrified him. He felt as if he had taken a leap into a great unknown, where triumph could easily tip into vulnerability. The laughter of his sons filled the air, but it was Mark's taunts that loomed like a thundercloud, threatening to overshadow this rare moment of joy. His heart raced with adrenaline, culminating in a sensation he had long forgotten, the desire to assert himself not only to Mark, but in his own life. There was power in choosing to respond differently this time, and Jake was beginning to understand that confronting his fears, however trivial they seemed to others, was a significant aspect of his personal evolution. "Dad," Ethan shrieked, tugging his sleeve and breaking him from his reverie. "Can we go on the Ferris wheel next?" "Sure," Jake replied, the word pouring out with renewed boldness. This wasn't just about indulging his sons, it was about rewriting his narrative. Each experience, no matter how small, held the possibility of transformation. As they approached the Ferris wheel, a towering structure adorned in colored lights, Jake felt a familiar rumble of apprehension. Just moments ago, he'd flung himself into spontaneous fun, but standing under the shadow of the mechanical beast now, doubt returned, as heavy as the ride itself. What if he looked foolish? What if he embarrassed himself in front of the other parents? Each question gnawed at the edges of his resolve. "Dad, come on," Tommy urged, his excited face gleaming under the lights. "You're not scared, are you?" The challenge was palpable. This was no longer simple amusement. This was a moment that tested him. Jake's instinct screamed caution, yet he felt an opposing force, the pull of authenticity, of wanting to share experiences with his sons that transcended his fears and reservations. Swallowing hard, Jake stepped forward. "Let's do it," he replied, steadying himself with a confidence he hadn't anticipated. The trio boarded the ride, and as the Ferris wheel began its ascent, Jake felt the world below them shrink. His past, with all its judgments and criticisms, slipped away like a fleeting memory. As they reached the highest point, suspended with the glow of the night around them, he caught a glimpse of his sons' faces, pure glee radiating through the joy of the ride. In that space, encapsulated by laughter and adrenaline, something shifted within him. The view before him was breathtaking, but more profoundly, he saw a new perspective on his life unfolding. The doubts he allowed to cling to him began to fade as clarity seeped in. "Look at how high we are!" Tommy exclaimed, beaming with awe. Jake felt a sharp pang of realization, a connection beyond father and sons.
it was also about growth. Each moment he chose to embrace life instead of retreating to comfort was a new step forward. He was not just a dad. He was building a legacy of courage, of living fully in the present. As the ride crested to a stop, Jake's heart swelled. This wasn't just fun. He was reclaiming who he was meant to be, actively participating in his life instead of letting fear dictate his choices. With every pulse of exhilaration, his commitment to growth solidified. Once their feet had returned to solid ground, Jake spotted Mark again, lingering where they had exited. Mark's presence, once intimidating, now seemed almost trivial compared to the joy he had just experienced. The decision to confront Mark again, armed with newfound strength, felt like a natural progression. "Stay here for a second, guys." It was a move toward facing this lingering doubt head-on. The resolve burning inside him felt empowering, yet a thrilling twist of fear flickered within. What if Mark ignited the doubts he thought he had banished? He stepped toward Mark, breathing deeply as his mind raced. This was not just about defending playful antics, it was about standing firm in who he was becoming. With every stride, Jake felt the weight of his internal struggles lighten. "What do you want, Mark?" he asked, his voice firm yet steady, ready for the confrontation he had long avoided. Would Mark's judgment still sting as it once did? Or would this shift in his narrative provide the clarity he desperately sought? The ground beneath him felt solid, yet the answer to that question remained suspended in the air, poised for revelation. Jake stood ready on the precipice of this next confrontation, determined to embrace whatever came next, in pursuit of this new, fearless self. Jake stood resolute, heart racing yet grounded in the confidence that had blossomed within him through the events of the day. Leaving behind the embarrassment of the past felt not just satisfying, but essential. Facing Mark wasn't merely about proving a point. It was about asserting his growth and reclaiming authority over his narrative and identity. "Look, Mark," Jake began, his voice steady despite the palpable tension. "I'm not here to compete with you. You've had your path and I have mine. I'm focused on what matters most, being a good father." The words came out clearly, like a declaration of independence from a life shackled by fear and self-doubt. Mark stared, assessing him, putting his judgment on hold momentarily as the surprise flickered across his face. Jake took a breath, sensing the shift. Each moment spent with Tommy and Ethan had redefined what success meant. The echo of their laughter, the warmth of their joy, had become a beacon guiding him away from the shadows of comparison. "Being a dad isn't about making the right choices in the eyes of others," Jake continued, his resolve hardening. "It's about being present, embracing the messy, silly moments, and showing up even when it gets tough. If you can't see that, then that's your loss." The words settled in the air, a weighty truth, one that shifted the dynamics of their exchange. Mark blinked twice, and for the first moment his facade of superiority softened. Perhaps a glimmer of understanding sparked, but Jake didn't linger on it. He had spoken his truth, unwavering and fierce. Behind him, laughter erupted from his sons, dragging Jake from the brink of confrontation back into the vibrancy of life around him. He turned, heart warming at the sight. Tommy, unreservedly joyous, his laughter a perfect melody with Ethan's exuberance as they danced around a stall adorned with colorful lights. This was his reality, the legacy he wished to foster, a truth far richer than anything Mark could define. "Let's go join them," Jake exclaimed, striding back toward the boys, who greeted him with infectious glee. Together, they approached a game where the objective involved tossing rings onto brightly colored bottles, a familiar game that reminded him of earlier moments, a simplicity that birthed connection. With each toss, laughter enveloped them. His boys cheered for him, blended in with their playful banter. As Jake expertly flipped a ring, landing it squarely on the target, the moment crystallized before him. This was what fulfillment felt like, It wasn't just winning, it was engaging, connecting, and allowing himself to feel liberated from the pressures of society's expectations. At that moment, he realized this was not just about an afternoon at a fair. It was a significant reclamation of his identity. He had journeyed from insecurity to empowerment, battling the shadows of self-doubt that had lingered for far too long. Jake was not only a father in this moment, he was proving to himself that his worth was built on love and presence, not just accomplishments. The game ended, and together they celebrated with more cotton candy, each bite a sweet reward for the adventures they had shared. With every sticky, sugary morsel, joy washed over him like a wave, further driving home the realization that he was crafting a new story, one that sang of vast possibilities and grew from the richness of mutual experiences. "Dad, this was the best day ever!" Tommy exclaimed, his eyes wide with wonder and pride. Jake knelt down, his heart full, meeting his son's gaze straight on. "I'm glad you think so, buddy. And remember, our best moments come when we're just true to ourselves." With that, he felt a surge of gratitude for this transformative day, a day that wasn't defined by competition, but by connection and authenticity. In the shadows of the fair's lights, Jake glanced back toward where Mark had stood. The light of victory didn't come from proving his worth to someone else. It emerged from within, illuminated through the eyes of his children and the laughter they shared. With renewed purpose, Jake embraced the chaos of family life, confident and determined to continue stepping boldly into whatever would come next. They left the fair, not just as a father and two boys, but as a united trio, fortified by their experiences and drawn tighter through the love and laughter they had chosen to share. Each stride felt like a promise kept. Tomorrow awaited, a clean slate, filled with new adventures, challenges, and opportunities to cultivate a life built on joy rather than fear. And with a shared smile, Jake knew that this wasn't just a day in the past. It was merely the beginning of a brighter journey ahead. Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm. Your support makes all the difference. Comment your reactions and theories about the ending. Let's keep the conversation alive. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion and experience this transformative journey. You need to subscribe now and don't wait even one more second to share. It's time to spread hope and inspiration.